everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Bruce Starr. You know, I'm coming out of the closet. You know this material. I am. I've been studying relationships for many, many years. And because I saw that people were so overwhelmed with paying their bills and the amount of disposable income was less and less and less in everybody's lives. I remember when I was in the 70s and I was going to college, if we wanted to go out to dinner, we went out to dinner. We wanted to go to the club or the bar. No one said, I don't have the money. They might have said, I don't feel like going. But no one ever said, I don't have the money. It's a different world now. I remember when I was living in Boston, and we lived in this beautiful house. 3 bedrooms, 10 minutes from Boston in Watertown, and rent was $300. And I had 2 roommates. So we shared $300 rent. And I got really upset when the landlord had to replace the refrigerator and charged us another $10 a month for a new refrigerator. So we had disposable income more than we have now. And I say that because when I was living in South Florida, and I'll explain to you, I did leave South Florida for about 10 years. When I was living in South Florida in the 90s, if I would do an event at a church or a synagogue, and I'd put a sign out front and maybe put a little ad in the newspaper, love, sex, and dating into the 21st century, I filled a room of 200 people. People were super interested then in their relationships. And as our disposable income went down and down and down, their level of anxiety went up and up and up, and they became much more preoccupied with money, making money, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. So when I said I'm coming out of the closet, that can mean a lot of different things. And what that means to me is I backed off being a relationship coach for many years. Now, I left the country and I was the first and only English-speaking TV and radio show host in the Western Caribbean. And so I wasn't doing relationship workshops then. But when I had to, for political reasons, come back to the country, people said, oh, you're not going to believe the difference. You left 10 years ago, you're not going to believe the difference. I said, okay, wow. When I came back, the whole world was different. The politics had changed the whole world. And I remember trying to do the same things back then, when I got back, as I did back then, and you couldn't get 20 people into a room who cared about their relationships. And then it was 10. And then it was 5. And I said to myself, you know what, I'm not going to waste my time. If people aren't interested, I'm not going to waste my time. So I started writing books. And this book, called Body Traders, I started writing in 1993. That's not true. I probably started writing it a few years after that. Now, how did I get the oomph to write a book like this? Body Traders, transforming back from player to lover. What is that all about? Transforming back from player to lover. So I'd been studying, I was in the entertainment industry during the 80s, and I went back to see a producer friend of mine who actually produced The Love Boat. Pretty cool guy. And he said to me, so what are you doing now? And I said, you know, I'm going to teach about relationships. He said, oh, really? He said, do you know about America Online? I said, what? He says, yeah, let me turn the monitor around. Let me show you America Online. And it was like this maze. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I didn't know anything about social applications online. It was something totally new. And I looked at this, and he said, you know, you can get a following if you're doing relationship work anywhere in the country. And he explained, just open up a room on America Online. I go through this story to tell you because I did that. I went home back to Florida and I opened up a room called Relationship Coaching. And the first time I opened it, I sat in there by myself for about 20 minutes or a half hour. I said, what an idiot. What am I doing here? I'm wasting my time. And then just about I was ready to shut it down. Beep. Someone came in. And you know, the first thing they do when they come into a room is they check out your profile. So I knew they could either leave or they could stay, but it would take maybe 30 seconds or a minute to see what I'm all about. And she said, hi. And I'm going, oh my God, I might have to actually do this. And she said, are you for real? And I said, I think so, because the name of the room was Relationship Coaching. Nobody was doing that. There was like 200,000 people on America Online at the time, which was nothing, throughout the whole country. And I said, yeah, try me. So she says, okay. And she said, where do I start? And I said, start at the most difficult part. So she went on to tell me that she was living in LA and she fell in love with someone in New York City. And she did a big fat no-no. She flew across country to be with this person in New York City. And he basically, you know, when he took her home, he held her captive in her, she was a captive in his apartment. And she was like scheming how to get out of there. And she was online on America Online. You can't make this up. And she talks to someone in St. Louis. Said, come here, I'll rescue you, I'll take care of you. So she sneaks out of his apartment, goes out to the airport, flies to St. Louis, and the guy did the same thing to her. Held her captive. And the most outrageous story happened like right from the beginning. And I said, I might have something here. So over the next 10 years, I was not in a committed relationship, so I had the time. Whenever I had a little bit of time to myself, I'd open up the computer and turn on America Online and open up the room, and sometimes there was one person, sometimes there was 10 people, sometimes there was 20 people. So for the next 10 years, see, nobody knows this about me now because they know this or they know that, but they don't know this. So you're learning it. For the next 10 years, I had over 6,000 detailed, intimate, documented conversations with people from around the country. And I was there to help them. I had a lot of information. I felt really good about what I knew, but they told me their stories, like you told me your story. And everybody told me their story, and they said, what do I do? And there's something inside of me. It's not an intellect. It's something inside of me that when I hear something, I get an answer to it. I can't explain it. It just works. I don't sit there and go, let me see. And that never happened. Not in 6,000 conversations. Imagine having 6,000 conversations with people telling me about their crazy relationships. And I was there, and I have these all on file. And so after I started doing that, I said, this is too much for nobody to know about. And I put the most interesting of these conversations in this book. And at the end was like, okay, this is what you can do so you don't keep on doing these crazy things here. So 15 years to write that book. Okay, here's the second book, and then we'll go to the worksheet. I was a school teacher.
Oh, me too.
Cool. I was teaching a lot of middle school because nobody else would want to teach middle school. So I taught middle school. And a couple of things happened. I don't know if I should say it. I will say it. One time I was walking around downtown in the area where I was at, and I'm an admirer of attractive things. And I see a lady, a female, quite a bit of a distance away, and she was wearing a tank top, like something that just goes right across something. Is that a tank top? Not a tank, a tube top. And I was kind of stunned because from a distance, she looked, really good. And I was, wow. So I'm just kind of getting a little closer, and I get a little closer. It's like, oh my God, it's my 12-year-old student. Now, why do I say that? Here's a 12-year-old student that's flaunting her stuff in the most sexual way, and I'm saying to myself, this girl is headed for trouble. I said, I can't imagine if she has a mother and a father home that she can be a parent to her and help her understand the path she's going down. She's 12 years old. Not good. And then another time, this was the last straw. I'm walking in the area where all the kids are. I'm walking by, and there's a couple of kids that have their backs to me, a couple of girls. They're 8th graders. I don't know if I should say this, but she said it, and I'm going to say it. No, I'm not going to say it. All right, I'll say it. It was horrifying. What's 8th grade? 12 years old, right? She's berating her girlfriend for doing something sexually that she shouldn't have done, sanitary-wise. And I'm going, oh my God, this is what they're talking about at 12 years old? I was like almost 18 before I had any idea about what was going on. So I said to myself, I've got to do something, because it's not just these girls over here or these boys, they're all over. And so I got in front of my computer, and just something took over me, and I just started writing, and I typed as fast as I could. And so 275 pages later is this book called The Teen Love Coach. How did this happen? You see the picture of the young lady sitting in a park by herself? This young lady would go to a park just to unwind after school. Kids drove her nuts, teachers drove her nuts, fighting and whatever they were doing, corrals just drove her nuts. She was just a simple young girl. But this simple young girl didn't have a father at home. This is all fictionist. And the mother was out working, because if there's no father, the mother has to work 2-3 jobs. So who's there to be there for this girl? Nobody. She's on her own. Where's she going to learn about sexuality, about how to get along? Who's she going to learn this from? Nowadays, it's gang members. But who's she going to learn this stuff from? Either nobody or kids that don't know almost any better than she does. So this book came at me, and what happened was this young girl would go to the park, unwind, and there would be a guy sitting like at the next bench. And he was feeding the birds, and she loved this idea of this guy feeding the birds. And she, maybe a week or two after, she started watching this guy. She finally got up the nerve to say, I want to feed the birds too. To make a long story short, she started talking to this man, and he was a very spiritual looking guy, older guy, kind of like me, gray hair, whatever. And she, over a month's period of time, started asking him questions for her life, about relationships at 13. So this book has every question a young girl from 13 to 18 could ask to help her own life. And she got every answer from this spirited guy who was on the bench with her for 5 years. And one time she went and he wasn't there, and she was like all upset. But imagine having a manual, a teenager and parents having a manual for how to navigate through your teen years with answers that could almost help you every step of the way. That's what this book is. You can find them both on Amazon. Anyway, I handed this out, and because there's 11 things here, I thought what we would do is have you take a second or two to look at them, because we're not going to have time to go through them all, but you certainly can take this home and you'll benefit from this. And let's, if you want to ask about one that sort of hits home, let's talk about it.
These are wonderful, Bruce.
Thank you.
These are wonderful. I mean, you've just taken it apart. And it's not just teenage years. We all have a unfulfilled teenager in us.
Absolutely.
It has
scarred teenagers, wounded teenagers.
I had parents at home, but there wasn't any talking about too much.
So where do you get this information from? So let's pick one out. You want to pick one out, Sandra?
Intentional time.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to name the 11, just for those of you at home can sort of, and you can always text me or write me, Luvcoach1, L-U-V, coach1 @gmail.com, and I'd be glad to send you this. So there's 11 here. I put one for extra credit. I was going to put 10 secrets to opening up your heart. So one is self-awareness. Next one is being vulnerable. Active listening is number 3. Having emotional intelligence when you're dealing with members of the opposite sex. I can't tell you how many times I hear from women who say, men are like retards. What's wrong with them? And you know what? A lot of them are. And here's why. I learned this in my years online. And what I'm going to share with you now is at the foundation of my work. Why are men so weird, retarded? Of course they're not retarded, but sometimes they act retarded, especially when it comes to relationships. How did that happen? So when you were 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, whatever it was for you, and you fell in love for the first time, I hope you did. It was a very exciting time. And when you did fall in love for the first time, if you were 13, 14, 15 years old, and you came from a semi-functional family as compared to dysfunctional, if it was fairly functional, you didn't carry a lot of luggage with you at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And when you met someone and you felt feelings of love, it was like, oh my God, there was nothing to hold you back. You were all in. And it was an amazing feeling. And if that didn't work out at the end, whether your parents broke you up, whether his parents broke you guys up, whether he or she went off to college, if someone broke you up and you didn't do the breaking up, it was a very difficult time. Heartbreaking. Nobody wants to go through a heartbreaking time. Nobody does. If you get your heart broken, especially men, now you ladies, you get to talk to your moms, your aunts, your nieces, your cousins, your beautiful, nice people, females that you know, and I got my heart broken. You talk to them, and they sort of give you a little bit of information, they calm you down. Do men talk to any other guys about, my God, someone broke my heart and I don't know what to do? And Frank in the gym is not going to help you at all when you're sitting there crying on the bench because someone broke your heart. You're stuck with those feelings and emotions. There's nobody to help you. So, when there's no way to clear that out, you get a little retarded. You hold back love. You hold back feelings. Nobody wants to feel that again. Sorry. Nobody wants to feel the pain of having someone break your heart. So men may never here's the retarded part when it comes to relationships. Men may never recover from getting their hearts broken. Never. A woman has a better chance, as we just talked about. She might try love again. If she has the right people coaching her, she might try love again. If she gets her heart broken again, because I like to do this. I have a pie theory. Okay, here's my pie. It's an apple pie. When I first fall in love, here's my whole pie. You can have it all. No problem. Here, please. And everybody's embracing the pie and everything is great. If you get your heart broken, even a female, and you try again, how much of that pie are you offering? Let's just think. Half? You're full of caution? You're full of distrust? Am I going to get my heart broken again? Remember, you didn't have that when you were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. Now, you're offering half a pie. And when you're wondering why relationships don't work like they used to, it starts with you. You're only offering a half a pie. And God forbid, because you're offering a half a pie and things don't work out after you try again, the next time you're down to offering a little sliver of that pie. And that's when you meet people on the internet with little slivers. Now, of course, not everybody, because everybody, well, I knew someone that got married. That's true. But they don't do it with a little sliver of a pie. They usually take 6 months or a year off. They stop dating. They don't go on 10 dates a week, 10 dates a month. They decide to take yoga classes. They decide to take exercise classes, astrology classes, whatever it is, to start building up their chi, to start building up their apple pie again. And then they have a chance to meet somebody. But not if they go from dating to, no, they're offering little, it's like taking two apple pie things, two people meeting on the internet and slamming those two aluminum pie tins together, make a lot of noise, might have some pretty good sex at first. Is that going to really work in the long term? No. The only thing that works in the long term is kindness, stability, and a lot of things that are on this page. The second one is being vulnerable. Can you be vulnerable if all you're worried about is someone breaking your heart? Not going to happen. So you have to heal your heart and know that in the future, you'll be making better choices. Once you take the time to heal your heart and raise your consciousness, you can trust the system more. You can trust. I have a good example for you. Do you know that airplanes fly at different levels? If you're going east to west, you're flying at odds levels, and if you're going west to east, you're flying at 41,000, and if you're going this way, you're flying at 24,000. Evens odds. So you're never to meet. Of course, it's designed that way. If you're traveling around with a broken heart, anger and bitterness and distrust, you're flying at 7,000 feet above ground. And you say to yourself, I wish I could meet a good man or a good woman. And that good man or good woman, they're there. But they're flying up here at 23,000 miles. They're there. They're out there. But you can't see each other. You're on different frequencies. You're on different levels. So how can you meet that great guy? You have to raise your vibration up to him or her. They're not going to see you down there. They're not going to look down there and say, oh, there's a broken person. Oh, she looks really good. She's broken. You know, a lawyer is not going to go out on the street and say, let me hang out with that street person. I'm not judging, but it's not going to happen because that lawyer has done whatever he's done to work on himself, and the guy in the street has taken a different pathway. Not bad people, they're all God's children, but they're on different levels of existing. So what we have to do, we have to constantly find ways to raise our vibration. And that vulnerability is a tough one, because until you feel good about yourself, think of love this way. In anything in life, don't you have to have something before you can give it to somebody else? You have to have something. You can't just give something to, you have to have it. If you have a red ball in your hand, you can only give that person a red ball if you have it first. Then you can extend it. So if you don't have love in your life for yourself, how do you extend feelings and thoughts of love to someone else? You can't. And all weekend long, I've been hearing about loving yourself, being kind to yourself, your electricity. Respect that. Respect yourself. Respect others. Be kind. There's a reason why we're hearing that, because it's the only way. There's no shortcuts. Active listening. I watch a lot of these dating shows, and I can't tell you how many times a woman after the date said, he didn't shut up. I didn't get a word in edgewise. Or maybe it was the other way too. So, active listening. I say something, give a little bit of space to the other person to share about themselves. Ask questions. You want people to find you super interesting? Be a person who asks them questions about themselves. They'll find you super interesting. What do I say? I don't know what to say. Ask them questions about themselves. Where did you come from? Where did you go to school? Let it start out that way. How did you become who you are today? What hobbies do you like? What movie? There's so many questions you can ask someone, and they'll say, that person I went out with tonight was fascinating. She just asked me all these incredible questions. Duh. Emotional intelligence. We started talking about this. I'm not going to say anything more. When you're off balance and out of control, you say and do stupid things. You look like you're lacking emotional intelligence. We talked about this. Trust building. When you're working your way back from not having love in your life, I'm going to give you an interesting example. In the community I come from, parents wanted their daughters to marry doctors and lawyers. Sounds logical, doesn't it? Sounds right. My community, sounds right. The problem is, doctors and lawyers do what? They learn about being a doctor and they learn about being a lawyer about 95% of the time. And they just expect the relationships to come to them, but they don't know how to be in a loving relationship. So after they marry these people, they don't want to be in a relationship like that where they're constantly with someone who's just being a doctor, just being a lawyer. They want to have more of a balance. When you start making better decisions, not from what other people are telling you to do, but common sense decisions about who to be with, not from what other people tell you, but what will work for you to be in a loving, committed, kind relationship long term. And once you start making those kinds of decisions rather than, oh, he's a doctor, oh, he's a lawyer. Even to this day, I hear that all the time. Yeah, he's a doctor. She's a doctor. You ought to stay with them. Okay, nothing wrong with doctors or lawyers, but again, they have to put 95% of their effort to being a doctor or a lawyer. And they hope that the person that they get married to will teach them, but it might already be too late. Shared values. You want to have you want to have things in common. You want to have, I found that it really helps to get to know people in my own community or my own culture. It wasn't such a battle to get to know people in my own culture. So that was super important to me. Healthy conflict, number 7. Navigating disagreements with respect and curiosity. There's nothing wrong with conflict. It's what actually deepens relationships. Conflict actually deepens relationship. It's a matter of how do you deal with those conflicts? That's the most important part. Mutual growth. You want to be in a relationship where you both want to grow. Doesn't have to be the same exact way, but you both want to grow. And you both want to be there. There's nothing more fascinating. Lauren and I are in a relationship of 27 years, and we were there for each other, mutually there for each other, to help each other grow. Where I was falling short, she tried to help me. Where she was falling short, I was the first one to bring it up and tell her, "Hi, honey. Hi, Lauren." Okay. Intentional time. Remember we talked about being with a lawyer and a doctor. How much intentional time can you be together when you're working all the time and you're striving all the time to achieve the career? Nothing wrong with that. But you have to find balance in your life, especially when you get a little older. You want to find balance in your life. You want to find time for both. Self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. There's nothing worse than self-judgment. There's nothing worse than being your toughest person against you. It's the worst thing you can do. You know, we're all children of God. Every single one of us. We don't have to earn that. We are all children of God. We don't have to deserve it. We don't have to deserve love. We don't have to deserve anything. All you have to do is acknowledge that we're each one of us an equal child of God, and that we deserve all good and only good. And that's absolutely the truth, and that's what you heard in every room this weekend. Same messages, different people, slightly different ways. And here's a tough one. Overcoming fear of rejection. Probably 80% of the people out there who are still looking for a relationship are fighting this nagging feeling that they don't want to get rejected. It hurts so bad. Even if it's like you're with someone you're not even sure, you're not having loving feelings yet, but you feel like being committed to them and you feel like trying it. There's nothing worse than having that person reject you. It's an instability when you're dating and sort of single. There's an instability there. And one of the things that helped me so much when I was with Lauren, I saw Lauren was a very caring, calm person. She was reliable. She was dependable. She wasn't playing games. She wasn't being irresponsible. She was someone that I can kind of depend on. And even if she wasn't the exact person I would pursue in the past, she was there. She was with me. And I said to myself, maybe when I was in my 20s or 30s or 40s, I don't know if I would have chosen Lauren because I might have been too immature. But as I got older, the things that I wanted in relationships shifted. I wanted reliability. When on TV you see these the guy or girl come home and, "Honey, I'm home early from work," and they walk in and there's a husband and wife in bed with somebody. I mean, it's a horrible. Just TV and movie stuff. It's all that, but it's terrible. If something like that, I knew that would never happen with Lauren. She was just such a reliable, dependable person. She was a solid person, and that's what I want in my life as I get older. I want a beautiful comrade in life. I want a beautiful someone that we could do stuff together, enjoy stuff together. It doesn't have to have all that, all that stuff that I wanted in my teens and 20s and 30s. Thank God I did a lot of that then, and I don't have to do unrealistic stuff now because I got that all done.